This is social theory, or how I learned to look at society completely different after my sociology class. So, what is social theory? It uses the scientific method that is used in all of the sciences. You're probably familiar with it. And they create hypotheses based upon observations and based upon research. And then they come up with a theory after that that is observable, and they often track it with raw data. Sometimes they don't. There's a debate among sociologists on which is the only, or which is the best way, I should say. And it is observable and repeatable. So it's something, as in all scientific methods, it has to be repeatable. And the theories that end up coming out from these observations kind of are used as the foundation by social scientists to study all the societies around the world. Now, people often ask, what is the difference between anthropology and sociology? So, in a nutshell, it's a really simplified way of looking at their differences, but anthropology studies cultures and sociology studies societies, specifically, and more importantly, industrial and post industrial societies. So, modern societies. Um, Psychology is often very interchangeable with this because when you look at cultures and you look at sociology, especially symbolic interactionism, it looks at individual behaviors and how they create and interact with the culture and society around them in a give and take, a constant give and take, where the individuals help create the society, but the society helps create the individual. So psychology plays a small role in that as well, but it is its own distinctive discipline. So some of the big theories, the major theories in sociology, we call them the big three, are functionalism and conflict theory as macro theories. They look at society as a whole. Functionalism is kind of given to Emile Durkheim as being the founder of that. He examined all aspects of modern society, and he found that through his observations, he looked to find function in dysfunction. So specifically, let's look at crime. So someone commits a crime, and let's say that they rob a house. If they're caught and there is effort made to catch them, then they are punished according to our laws. Now, this creates an example for other people in society to understand that if you violate those social contracts, that there will be punishment and what that punishment will be. So it provides that example. That's its function, as well as providing specific parameters of what the social contract ensues. He looked organic versus mechanical solidarity. What holds societies together? What's the glue that makes it stick and continue? And two of the terms you may have heard is Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. So organic is the older Amish. That is the Gemeinschaft. Organic Gemeinschaft, think of the Amish. And the Amish are pretty much self-sufficient, right? The families really don't need to interact with other Amish families. They know how to produce their own food, to raise their own animals, to make their food from scratch. They know how to grind their flours and process their lumber, and for building homes, they know how to build their homes, they know how to build their wells, etc., etc. So they're very self-sufficient. So why do the Amish stick together? And in these older organic or Gemeinschaft societies, it is often religion, that form of commonality that creates its own culture and binds people together. So the Amish do share the religion that they have, and that is the glue. Now, mechanical solidarity or Gesellschaft, modern society, it looks at society more like the human body. So the human body has numerous different organs and cells that all work together, but they play different roles, right? So a lot of it we can trace back to your purchase of a Big Mac through McDonald's drive-thru. As a consumer of the Big Mac, you didn't have to raise the cows or grow the wheat or the lettuce or the cucumbers and pickle them and process the meat and the bread and bake it and transport it and then create it and pull it all together in its processed form. Those are all done by numerous people. Think of how many people actually had their hands in making your Big Mac possible when you went through the drive-through and took 5 minutes to get that Big Mac. So the Gazal shaft, the mechanical solid, or the Gazal shaft, the mechanical solidarity, the glue that holds people together is their interaction, their dependency upon each other. So most of us don't slaughter animals on a regular basis. Most of us don't grow our own wheat and grind our own flour. Most of us don't process our own pickles, grow our own lettuce and store it and process it. These things now are interactive. You go to the grocery store, you go to the meat counter, you pick out your processed meat. You go to the vegetable or the produce section and you pick out your vegetables that you want. And then you go to the bakery and pick out the breads that you want. These things are all done by other people. Our ability to function depends on each other. So that's functionalism in a nutshell. Now for conflict theory, which is basically given to Karl Marx, he wrote the Communist Manifesto. And to note up front, except for 1 month in Paris, post their revolution, there has never been a truly communist state, and Marx is probably rolling over in his grave, thinking of what became of his Communist Manifesto and how it was misused and mislabeled by people who created societies that were heavily totalitarian and extremely restrictive. We'll get into that as we examine how conflict theory plays a role in other institutions in our society. So again, society at large, and what Karl Marx theorized was that capitalism created gross inequalities and conflicts between the haves and the have-nots, the 1% and the 99%, and I'm sure you've heard these terms before. So he saw only two classes, and other future conflict theorists began to expand upon this, saying, yes, there are actually more than two classes, and fitting them in. But for now, just know he saw only two classes. The bourgeoisie, they are the owners of the means of production. And the big way you can tell a bourgeoisie or a bougie person, you probably heard that term, is they don't need to work. Their money works for them. Now, this doesn't mean that members of the bourgeoisie class don't work. They can work. They just don't have to. So some work, trying to think of, let's look at Ivanka Trump. She works. She goes to work. She works for her father's company. She creates her own offshoots where she does her designing labels, etc., etc. But she doesn't have to work. It's a choice. Paris Hilton is another great example because she chooses not to work. Really, selling yourself to appear at parties is not necessarily a work choice. And then we have the proletariat, which is everybody else, everybody who has to go and earn some form of payment. They can't rely just on their money to work for them. They have to go out and sell themselves. And this is a very important distinction because when you look at people like doctors and lawyers, judges, well, they don't make a ton of money, but people who make a large amount of money, that doesn't nearly necessarily put them in the bourgeoisie class. It puts them in the proletariat. If they have to go to work, to an office, and actually work because they need the income in order to pay their bills, then they're part of the proletariat. Yes, it includes the working man, the good old-fashioned factory worker or construction worker, but it also includes people who perform jobs that we consider more white-collar. Now, Marx theorized that this conflict, the struggle between the limited and scarcity of resources, would drive social change, resulting in a pure communist state of shared resources. This is where you get the offshoots of socialism and how communism has been grossly misinterpreted. Sure, China and the former USSR and Venezuela and Cuba all may have used Karl Marx's writings as the basis for the revolution itself, but once the revolution was over, those poor proletariat stayed in the same sad lot that they had been under capitalism because the communist
So the
states
only
were
micro
only
theory,
communism in name,
the only micro
not
theory
in
we're going to look
actual
at in
deeds and
sociology is
actions.
symbolic interactionism,
And
it was
they
given to
suppressed
George
dissent.
H. Mead
They
as
suppressed
being
the ability for people
founder
to
of this.
maneuver,
And
and
this is
became
where you get a
a
lot of
very
blended. So some of the
totalitarian
terms
state
you'll
in
see
almost
when we
every
look at Mead
indication.
are going to
China,
be
up
very,
until very recently, when you look
very
under
much
Chairman
used
Mao, is
also in
extremely
psychology.
repressive. And up until
So it
very
looks at how
recently,
people
where they
use
began to have a more
symbols
blended
and
economy,
language and society,
they became
to
it
shape
opened up
who they are, and in
classes
turn they shape
to
their society.
working stiffs.
It's those
who
shared symbols
could not
and memes
navigate
that
those
we have.
classes prior.
It
to.
has three basic concepts.
In
which
the
is
end,
understanding
Karl
the
Marx
meaning,
believed
labeling using
that
language
America would be
and
the great
other
communist
even
state
tangible
because we
items,
had democracy.
and then the thought
And he
we
felt
have,
democracy
how
would
we
give the vote to
process
everybody.
those concepts,
And while it may
and
not
put it
have
into
at the
practical
beginning, it
application.
did over the course of time open up the
These
vote to
meanings
anyone
are continually
over the age of
created,
21.
and
Originally it started out
great
just as
individuals in their
landowners,
society
originally
program
started out just
us,
as
so
men,
to say.
but
And
we're at the
also in
point today
turn,
where
individuals
everyone
help
can
change
vote.
society.
What
and
Marx
create it. This is how we have
theorized
generational
again
shifts.
is that
So
this
why
could be
the
misused
1950s
by the
teenager
bourgeoisie
loved rock and roll
and would
their
allow
parents
them
thought rock and roll was
to
evil
manipulate
and horrible,
the political system
and then
to
how
their
today those
advantage.
same people who
And
were
that's
in
what he saw
love
happen.
with
So the
Elvis
dreams
Presley
he had
and
for
thought he was
America
wonderful,
becoming
even though their
the
parents
great
hated him,
proletariat
can't
state
understand
ended
why
up turning
their
into the system we have
grandchildren
today, which
like
doesn't
the
matter
music
which
that
party
they do because
you're
it
affiliated
seems
with
awful,
or
and
how you
horrible.
consider yourself liberal or conservative.
I
In
want to
the
use an
end,
example of how we have these shared,
both
we create
sides
these
believe
shared
that our
ideas
political
and labels
system is
and
broken and it
symbols that
doesn't
we
work
use.
for the average
So if you
person,
think of the
and it
holidays,
requires
I'm
some
going to
form
go
of
ahead and
fixing.
give you three colors.
See, we have something
And I want
in
you to think of
common.
what holiday it is. So red, white, and green. What holiday do those three colors associate with? If you think Christmas, the green Christmas trees, the red on Santa's suit, and the white with the snow that we associate, even if you live in an area that doesn't have snow, then you kind of associate that Christmas is revolves around snow and snowflakes. Songs that we kind of associate with Christmas, all those things kind of come together. Now, if you were to use those in many modern Christian nations, they would be the similar things. However, if you look at holidays that are specific to our culture, so I'm going to say again three colors, red, white, and blue. What holidays do you associate with that with? And most people would go to the 4th of July. And in the US, anyhow. So when you were to take those colors and tell them those colors to people who live in Brazil and say, what holiday does red, white, and blue remind you of? They would not associate it with the 4th of July because their culture doesn't perceive that as a holiday since they're Brazil and not the United States. Another great example is expectations after greetings. So you pass somebody in the hallway and you say, hey, what's up? How you doing? You expect a brief, short answer. Unfortunately, somebody can shake that up a little bit. So if you were to pass by somebody and ask them, how are you doing? And they were to give you a detailed version with a litany of everything that happened to them between the time you last saw them and today, not only would you be mildly perturbed because it took up and consumed an enormous amount of time that you weren't anticipating using, but it also would make you question as to why is this person giving me their life story when I just asked them how they're doing. You're supposed to say, fine, thank you, how about you? So these expectations that we have can be shaken up. What if somebody said goodbye as you pass them in the hallway instead of hello or hey? If someone answered the phone saying goodbye, that would be testing and pushing the bounds of what our norms are. You expect when someone answers the phone that they are to say hello. So again, they're often unique to specific cultures, don't necessarily transfer. The whole shoe thing thrown at George W. Bush when he was president of the United States and did a press conference in Iraq, and an Iraqi journalist threw a shoe at him, was not meant to hurt him or physically harm him. It was meant as a symbol of disrespect that he believed the United States should not have come into the country and done what they did. And showing them the bottom of the shoe was saying, you're lower than the ground I walk upon. And that was it. That wasn't too bad. It was only a few slides. Didn't hurt, but now you're so much smarter. Have a great day.